Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today, we are going to complete our study of the prophet Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, chapter 51. So this is 51b. This is Saul Weiner, the host for the podcast. We stopped at verse 32, and 51a. So now in B, we're going to start with verse 33. Here, we find the beginning of a conversation between God and Jerusalem, or God and the people of Israel speaking for Jerusalem. We've seen similar presentations by other prophets where there's a conversation between God and his people, or God and the nation. So we're going to start with verse 33. And this is God speaking. Because so says God, the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel. Bat Bavel, the daughter Babylon, Kigoren ate hidricha. She is like a threshing floor at the time we tread upon it. Od ma'at uva'a et hakotzir la. In a moment, the season for her harvest will come. Remember that Jeremiah is still talking about the destruction of Babylon. So God says to the people, says to Israel, says to Judah, says to the land, that Babylon is now, the time for the destruction of Babylon is about to be here. They are going to be like a threshing floor getting crushed. Now, the Jerusalem speaks, or Zion speaks. Acholani hamamani Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, has devoured me and crushed me. Hitzigani klirik, he left me like an empty vessel because he took the people out of Jerusalem. Biloani katanin, he swallowed me like a crocodile. Excuse me. Milo kreso me Adonai, he filled his belly with my delicacies. In other words, with my people, with whom he enslaved. Hedichani, he has cast me away and left me with nothing. Chamosi, my stolen possessions. Ushe'eri, and my flesh itself. Al Bavel has now went to Bavel. In other words, all of my riches and wealth of the temple has been taken to Babylon, and even my flesh, meaning the people that are supposed to be living here, have been taken to Babylon. Tomar Yosheves Tion. This is what she who dwells in Zion is now saying. Vidami, that's how we can see that these last verses are being spoken by the dwellers of Zion, or by Zion itself. Vidami el Yoshvei Kastim, and my blood is upon those that live in the land of Chaldea. Tomar Yerushalayim, so says Jerusalem herself. My blood, meaning that it is their fault. They are responsible. Now God has a rather long answer. Next several verses are God speaking back to the people. This is going to go all the way from verse 36 through verse 50. Lachain, therefore call Mar Adonai, so says God. We're going to read a lot about destruction of Babylon. So just hang on for some more words of destruction. Hineni Rav es Riveich, I, God, am going to fight your fight. I will take up your cause. And I am going to take your revenge. Remember, God is speaking to Jerusalem. I will dry up her sea, and I will cause her fountain to evaporate. Remember, Babylon was powerful in large part, due to her proximity to the large rivers, Tigris and Euphrates. Saying God will dry up her rivers is like saying he will dry up their source of strength. And Babylon will become like heaps of stones. Ma'on Tanim, a place where jackals run about, like a wild, desolate field. Shama Ushreka Me'en Yoshev, will be a place of desolation, a place of shrieking with no inhabitants. Yachtov kakfirim yishagu na'aru kigorei aroyot. They will roar in unison like young lions and bray like lion cubs, referring to the wild animals that will inhabit the place that is now Babylon. I'm reading verse 39 now. Bechumam, when they are warm. Ashit et mishtehem, I will put out their drink, v'hishkartim, and then they will get drunk. This is God talking to the Babylonians. Legend has it that the night that they were attacked by Persia, Belshazzar, the king of Babylon, was partying and getting drunk. They were so oblivious to the oncoming danger and so confident in their strength that the people and the nobles were literally partying and drunk, lemanya alozu, in order that they should revel or party, v'yashnu shenat olam, and then in the end they'll get attacked and they're going to sleep the sleep forever, v'lo yakitzu, and they'll never wake up, no madonai, because they will be killed by the enemies. Verse 40, orireim kicharim, I will lead them down, kicharim, litvoach, like sheep being led to slaughter, ke'elim imatudim, like rams together with male goats being brought to the slaughterhouse. Eich nilkedosh sheshach, how is it that Babylon has been taken captive? Sheshach is by a system of transposing letters, Hebrew letters, called atbash, where it's a little too detailed to explain right now for the purpose of this, but the opposite letters of Bavel would be Sheshach. So God, how is it that Bavel has been struck down or taken captive, and it's using this system, because Sheshach would be the upside down of the word Bavel, Babylon. The praise of all the earth has been seized. This was the praise of all the earth because it was the mighty, powerful, beautiful nation. How Babylon has now become a desolation among the nations. The sea has overcome Babylon. This is the sea of invading armies have overcome it. She is enveloped by the raging waves. Of course, meaning of the armies that are attacking her. Verse 43, her towns have become desolate. Eretz Tziyah v'arava, they have become parched land and desert. Lo yeshev bahen kolish, no man dwells there. V'lo yavor bahen ben adam, and no person even uses them as a road to pass through. V'kati al bel b'vavel, I will bring retribution and punishment upon Baal. Baal is the god of one of the gods of Babylon. Probably the source of the name Babylon is from their god Baal. I shall make what he swallowed up come up from his mouth. Meaning I will make him vomit. I will make him vomit forth his people. The people that are worshiping Baal will be vomited forth from their land. And no longer will nations come and towards Babylon in order to pray at their temples and appease their kings. Gam chomat Bavel nafala, even the mighty walls of Babylon are going to fall. Tzu'u mitocha ami, my people. This is the God referencing his people Israel, saying, "Get out of, leave from there, leave from within there. Umaltu ish es nafsho, may each person save their own lives. Mecharonah Adonai, from before the anger of God. Leave, get out." And get out of Babylon because they are doomed. Do not be faint of heart and fearful regarding the rumor that is being heard in the land. And later that year another rumor, and later that year another rumor. Don't be fooled, and don't be afraid to leave because of all kinds of rumors and nonsense. I'm telling you, of Chamos ba'aretz, and violence in the land, and Moshel al Moshel, and rulers fighting with rulers. Don't be afraid of that. Babylon, your oppressor, will be destroyed. You can leave. Therefore, there are days coming. This is verse 47. I will punish and take retribution upon the graven images, the idols of Babylon, and her entire land will be ashamed, and all of those that are slain in battle will fall within Babylon. And heaven and earth and everything that is contained in the entire universe will be happy and rejoice. Because from the north, meaning from Persia and Media, which is to the north of Babylon, the Hashodidim Num Adonai, the ravagers, are going to come against her. Gam Bavel, this is verse 49. Linpol Chalei Yisrael. It's because of Babylon that the slain people of Israel have fallen. So therefore, because they have done that terrible deed, Gam leBavel naflu chalei chal aretz. Therefore, also because the slain of the entire land lay fallen. This let me correct the translation of this verse. Gam Bavel and Pol Chalei Yisrael. It is Babylon's fault that the slain of Israel have fallen. But as Jeremiah reminds us, it wasn't just Israel. Gam Bavel. It is also Bavel's fault that Naflu Chalei Chol Haaretz, that the dead of all of the nations that she oppressed and conquered have fallen. So Babylon is again, Jeremiah is addressing Israel, but constantly reminds us that he's referring to all of the nations that Babylon made suffer as well. Pleitim mecherev, those that have been spared of the sword, hilchu, go, get out of there, get out of Babylon. Al tamoru, don't stand there. Zichru merachoket Adonai. Remember God from afar. Even though you're far away from where God's centers used to be in Jerusalem, remember God. V'Yushalayim tala alavavchem, and remember Jerusalem in your heart, and leave Babylon, and go to Jerusalem. Verse 51. Boshnu ki shamanu cherpa. Now here, this is Jerusalem answering God back. God said, I will take your revenge. I will destroy Babylon. I will free you from Babylon. Remember where you're supposed to come back to. Come back to Jerusalem. And now Jerusalem answers and says, Boshnu, we are ashamed. Boshnu, we are ashamed ki shamanu cherpa, because we have heard of our disgrace. We have heard, we understand what we did wrong. We're embarrassed that we sinned and therefore deserved this punishment that we had upon us. Kistach lima panenu. Our faces are full of embarrassment. Ki ba'u zarim al mikdashei beit Adonai. Because now, because of our deeds, strangers have come and destroyed, meaning Babylon had come and destroyed the holy, sacred areas of God's house. This is what the people respond. God says it's time. Babylon will be destroyed, and you're going to come back to Jerusalem. Meanwhile, what we feel is shame that all of this disaster came about because of our deeds. Verse 52, God answers again. Now He's talking. God is talking back to the people. Therefore, God says that don't worry, days are coming. I am going to take retribution against the graven images of Babylon, and all over the land of her land, in other words, the land of Babylon, the slain people shall take their last breath. Ki ta'aleh Bavel hashamayim, even should Babylon ascend to the heavens. This is a reference to the tall buildings known as the ziggurat, these tall towers built to both impress people and defend. Which also, if you remember, the Tower of Babel in Genesis was inspired by the ziggurat in Babylon, these tall buildings. Even if Babylon builds to the heavens, and even if they fortify the heights of their strength, still me'iti yavo'u shodedimla, the marauders, the attackers, shall still come to her and take her down. No, Adonai says God, nothing will stand in front of me. Now we turn from this conversation between God and the people, and we listen to the prophet himself start to speak. In verse 54, Kol ze'akah mi Bavel, there's the sound of a cry coming from Babylon, v'shever gadol me'eretz kasdim, and a great collapse is coming from the lands of the Chaldeans. Ki shoded Adonai et Bavel, because God is marauding or destroying Babylon. V'ibad mimena kol gadol, and gone from her is the great sound. In other words, the noise of all the comings and goings in business as she was the capital of the world. That's all that loud noise is gone. There are waves that would rage like great waters. The waves, again, is probably a reference to the armies, the waves of soldiers that used to come from Babylon. They like great waters, they're gone. Nitan sha'on kolam, and they used to come giving out this great tumultuous sound, this loud sound, but they're gone. Kiva aleha al Bavel shoded, because the marauder has come upon Babylon. V'nilkedu giborei, her powerful men have been taken captive. Chitisah kashtotam, their bows have been crushed. In other words, their weapons are crushed. Ki el gimulot Adonai shalem mishalem, because God is a God of recompense. In other words, God is a God who pays back evil. They were evil towards their enemies. God repays them. Shalem mishalem. He will indeed repay them. And again, a reference to the partying that they had, the confidence that they had. It's often when a society becomes decadent and becomes overconfident and becomes overwealthy that they are the most vulnerable and the most likely to sin and rebel against God. So again, I will intoxicate her governors, her officials, her wise men, her deputies, and her mighty men. And after that party, they're going to end up sleeping the sleep that lasts forever. They will never wake up. So says God, the king, the real king, whose name is God, the Lord of hosts. So now I'm about to read verse 58. Ko Amar Adonai Tzvaos. Those what we said before, the words of the prophet. Now this is again God speaking. This is, and the prophet speaking the word of God. This is what God said: Chomot Bavel herchava arer titarar. The broad wall, the big protection wall of Babylon will be demolished, and her high gates shall be set afire. Shareh hagvoim ba'esh yitzatu v'yigu amim b'deirik and people shall toil for naught. In other words, those that are trying to defend Babylon, those that have done so much to build Babylon, are working for nothing, because it's all going to fall apart. And nations, meaning those nations that are working for Babylon, in the end they will earn just destruction in fire, and they will be just exhausted and no longer be able to defend themselves. The last few verses changes pace a little bit and gives us a little bit of a historical perspective on when these words were said. These words, Jeremiah, were said as follows, verse 59. When did Jeremiah speak these words against Babylon? Remember, Tzidkiyahu was the last king of Judah. He began as a vassal to Babylon, but then he organized a revolt against Babylon, and that revolt started somewhere around the 4th year of Tzidkiyahu's rule. Apparently, we're about to learn that when this revolt was started, Tzidkiyahu had talked to 5 kings of the surrounding nations of Tyre and Moab and Ammon and Gaza, and had drawn up a pact that all of them would band together to fight Babylon for power. Apparently, the Babylonians, this is not clear from the text, but this is it seems likely that this is what happened. Babylon was getting suspicious, and the king Tzidkiyahu of Judah went to Babylon in order to pay tribute to Babylon, probably to not just to pay tribute, but also to show his fealty to Babylon and his subservience to them, in order to appease the king Nebuchadnezzar, so that he wouldn't think that there's a rebellion afoot. And at this time, the king was accompanied by one of his closest advisors, the advisor who was called the Sar Menucha, the one who he used to relax with, the one who was the confidant of the king, who the king would sit and talk about with and drink with and play games with and sit around in his lounge and, for the modern equivalent, smoke a cigar with. So these words were said at the time and written down at the time when Tzidkiyahu was about to make his trip to Babylon to appease the king Nebuchadnezzar, so that he shouldn't be suspicious that a rebellion is afoot. And this, his right-hand man was a man that we're about to learn about, Seraiah ben Neriah. Seraiah was his name. He was the son of Neriah. Neriah was also the name of the father of Baruch, Jeremiah's scribe. I'm not sure if they're related or not, but either way, both Seraiah and Baruch had a father with the same name. Whether they were the same person, I don't know. So Hadavara, this is verse 59. Hadavara asher tzivar Yirmiyahu hanavi et Seraya ven Neriah ven Machseah. This is the word that Jeremiah the prophet commanded Seraya, this assistant of the king, Belechto, when he accompanied at Tzidkiyahu Melech Yehuda Bavel, when he accompanied the king Tzidkiyahu, the king of Judah, to Babylon on this mission of appeasement, Bishnat Revi'it L'Melcho, which took place in the 4th year of his kingdom, Usiraya Sar Menucha, and Siraya was the officer with whom the king used to relax, so he was a close confidant of the king, and Jeremiah told this confidant of the king the following message. And he said, what did he do? He did as follows. Verse 60. Vayechtov Yirmiyahu et kol hara'ah asher tavo el Bavel el sefer echad. Jeremiah wrote down all of these prophecies of destruction that he prophesied about what's going to happen to Babylon in one long scroll. Eit kol hadvarim ha'ela, all of these things which we've just read together, chapter 50 and 51, haktuvim el Bavel, that were written regarding Babylon. Vayomer Yirmiyahu, this is verse 61, el Seraya, and Jeremiah said to Seraya, Kivoach al Bavel, when you get to Babylon, viraita, and you see Babylon, I'm sorry, Vira'ita Vikarata, you will see, that you will read. In other words, make sure to read Eit Kol Hadvarim Ha'ela, presumably in public. Announce these things in public. V'amarta, and you should say, Adonai ato dibarto el hamakom hazel achriso. Lord, you declared that this place shall be cut off. Levilti heyot bo yoshev, that there will be no one living here. L'me'adam v'ad behema ki shemamot olam tiyeh, not humans or animals, because this will be desolate for all time. This is at a time when the Nebuchadnezzar was pretty much at the zenith of his power, and the city of Babylon was one of the most lively, most important commercial and political centers of the entire known civilized world, at least in that hemisphere. And here the assistant of the king was announcing that one day it's going to be completely destroyed and desolate with no one living there. It's hard to imagine how this would not have undermined Tzidkiyahu's message when he came to appease the king Nebuchadnezzar, when his closest confidant is announcing in the streets that Babylon will be destroyed. It's very hard to imagine how Tzidkiyahu and Seraya got out of Babylon alive. I know this is kind of using my imagination a little, but what I'm thinking is that the way that happened is because it seemed so silly to say that one day Babylon will be destroyed, being that now this is the most powerful nation in the world, that people probably laughed at him and thought he was nuts and out of his mind, and therefore no one took him seriously. This is verse 63, and Jeremiah is still instructing him what to do. When you finish L'Kroat Sefer Hazeh, reading this book, this scroll, Tiksharol of Evan, tie a stone around it, tie a rope and then a stone to the rope, Vishlachto al toch Pirat, and throw it into the Euphrates River, so that it sinks to the bottom and no one will ever see it again. The Omarta, and you'll say that Kacha Tishka Bavel, the same way that scroll is sunk to the bottom of the Euphrates and tied to a rock so no one will ever see it again, Velota Kum, and so similarly will Babylon itself sink and drown and will never ever arise again, because of the disaster that I am bringing upon. And remember, he's speaking in the name of God, via Efu, and they shall become completely exhausted, the people of Babylon. Adhena devrei Yirmiyahu, until this point, these are the words of Jeremiah, the prophet. This concludes chapter 51. We have one chapter left, which is going to be a little bit more of a historical review than anything else. That's chapter 52. And 52 will complete our study of the book of Jeremiah. Thank you so much for studying with me the book until now. Looking forward to studying chapter 52 and completing this great book of Jeremiah together.